I have my own thoughts, but because they are my own thoughts, I don't want to give them ideas. So I'm going to hold on to my thoughts and watch how this shakes out. I have my own thoughts about how this is going to shake out, and as I said, I don't want to give the other side the power over what I'm thinking. So I guess the question is, with all that's going on, do we think that Paramount maybe bowed to political pressure, or was it just business, or is it a little suspect at the timing? I mean, or is it all of those things?
I think two things can be true at once. You cannot ignore the politics of the moment, that this is a president who's made clear how he feels about certain people in the media, and there's this multi-billion dollar, $8 billion merger that's pending that the government can weigh in on. And then you also have to look at the economics of the television industry. The fact that shows as iconic as The Late Show have a fraction of the viewership that they had even 20 years ago. This report was that he was losing about $40 million a year while commanding Colbert a salary of $20 million. But my question is this. My question is...
It all began with the jaw-dropping collapse of one of late-night TV's once untouchable giants, Stephen Colbert. For years, he ruled the screen with sharp jabs, smug monologues, and a brand of comedy that blurred the line between satire and nightly political scolding. But suddenly, the spotlight dimmed it. Not because of censorship, scandal, or some shadowy government plot, no. This was something far more ruthless. The numbers, brutal financial losses, nearly $40 million a year, quietly sealed the show's fate. Yet instead of acknowledging the reality, panic erupted elsewhere. Over on The View, Sunny Hostin and her co-hosts were already spiraling, throwing out breathless warnings about democracy under attack and muttering about creeping authoritarianism. Reality, it seems, was too dull a villain.
I think that we don't know if it's purely financial. I mean, if you look at some of the numbers, it could be financial. And I don't know that it's purely political. It could be. But my concern is, if it is political, then everyone should be concerned. People on the right should be concerned. People on the left should be concerned. Because it's very clear that if it is political, this is the dismantling of our democracy. This is the dismantling of our Constitution, right? And so the First Amendment is the First Amendment for a reason, and that is freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom to speak truth to power. If that is taken away, if the comedians are being attacked, then that means our Constitution is being dismantled.
This wasn't your typical TV chatter, was alive, unfiltered, unraveling on national television. The View, one of the last mainstream daytime shows still clinging tightly to its vintage political playbook, suddenly found itself rattled. The fall of a media titan like Colbert sent shockwaves through their carefully crafted narrative. On air, the tension was thick. Was this the chilling hand of political suppression? A creeping fascist crackdown on free speech? Or a less dramatically, but more dumbing, just a brutal business reality finally catching up? As the cameras rolled, the scramble to spin the collapse turned into its own chaotic spectacle.
That means the very rubric of our democracy is being dismantled, and I think every single person should be really, really concerned about it. I'm thrilled that Senator Warren, Elizabeth Warren, Senator Bernie Sanders is asking Skydance, is asking for answers whether or not this was political. The Writers Guild is actually asking the Attorney General to look into this situation to find out if it was political. And if we find out it is political, what are we going to do as a country? We must protect our Constitution, and we must protect our democracy. I think this is bigger than just the cancellation of a television show.
I think it's great.
Quick pause. If you're enjoying this deep dive, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It might seem small, but it makes a huge difference and helps us keep bringing you the stories that mainstream media won't touch. All right, back to
linear TV is going to be a niche option in 2029. That's not that far off right now. So as you watch the ad revenue, it dropped.
What do you call it? Linear TV?
Linear TV.
Is that
like,
what we're on?
Yes.
Yeah.
But we're also on streaming, Hulu, and Disney+.
That's why I'm saying I got nothing to hide here, guys. In 2018, advertising has dropped by 40% since 2018 as ad revenue moves to digital content and non-traditional media.
As the panic visibly rippled through the studio, it quickly became obvious this wasn't just about Stephen Colbert anymore. This was about the bigger picture. What happens when the media echo chamber finally cracks? When the once faces of primetime realize the audience has stopped tuning in. The illusion of untouchability, gone, while the hosts of The View scrambled for dramatic answers, some bordering on hysteria. One voice dared to cut through the chaos. Alyssa Farah Griffin didn't bring tears, outrage, or wild theories. She brought something rare in that moment: clarity. No theatrics, just logic. She calmly broke it all down with facts, not feeling.
The difference here is corporate media overlords that have other interests, and that's why new independent media is one of the rising places that people consume content, because you don't have people making those
just add something about the money, the numbers here, because we're talking about the $40 million, and a lot of people are reporting that it was the advertising revenues went down. But if you look at the estimates from Edo Ad Engage, late night broadcast TV shows took in $150 million over the 12-month period from July 21st, 24 to July 20th, 2025. That is up 6%. Up 6%, not down. And so the Late Show with Stephen Colbert was also estimated to have earned $59.9 million in ad revenue. It is down 2% year over year, but it's still almost $60 million.
Let's be honest. If a show is hemorrhaging $40 million every single year, no amount of celebrity sparkle can save it. Networks don't run on sentimentality. They run on numbers. Cold, brutal numbers. And The Late Show was bleeding cash like a sinking ship. So, regardless of Stephen Colbert's fame, the outcome was inevitable. Cancellation. That's not censorship. That's business. Alyssa Farah Griffin, trying to keep the conversation grounded, pointed this out with calm, reasoned clarity. She laid it out, plainly, no theatrics, no blame games. The numbers didn't lie. Colbert's salary alone was $20 million, and his ratings were a shadow of the show's former glory. Add to that, a production team bloated with over 200 staff members, and it was a financial disaster waiting to implode. But just as Alyssa wrapped up her perfectly reasonable breakdown, Joy Behar decided to crack a joke. And not just any joke. Wildly toned F1. She quipped that even Donald Trump's casinos didn't lose that much money. You could almost hear the collective gasp. The room tensed. It was one of those moments where the attempt at humor backfired instantly. Mid-sentence, even Joy seemed to realize the punchline actually made Colbert look worse, not better. It didn't land, it imploded. And while Joy tried to play it off, the real spectacle was just beginning. Sunny Hostin, never one to miss a dramatic cue, jumped back into the conversation with a level of intensity that could make you think the Constitution itself was under siege. With the seriousness of someone delivering a national security warning, she suggested that Colbert's firing might not be about money at all. No, according to her, this could be political. A warning sign, an authoritarian red flag. Her voice lowered. Her eyes narrowed. She invoked the First Amendment, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, the sacred role of speaking truth to power. She framed the cancellation of The Late Show as the start of a chilling silencing campaign, one that could spell doom for American democracy. There was no evidence, no coercion, no backdoor pressure campaign, just a show that cost more than it earned, led by a host who, despite his prominence, wasn't pulling in the viewers. But that didn't stop Sunny. In her mind, Colbert wasn't just a late-night host, he was a martyr, a symbol of resistance, crushed under the weight of invisible political forces. And the truly astonishing part, Sunny wasn't joking. She wasn't exaggerating for dramatic effect. She genuinely believed this was the beginning of the end, a moment in history, a sign that comedians speaking truth were now being hunted by authoritarian forces. It was less about facts and more about fear, manufactured fear, theatrically delivered in front of daytime television's most loyal audience. Meanwhile, the rest of the panel sat frozen, some clearly confused, others silently cringing, eyes darting as if trying to find the nearest exit. But Sunny wasn't finished. Not even close. She wasn't going to let this cancellation go down quietly. Instead, she hit the gas and took her rant to full-blown DEFCON levels. Now, this wasn't just about a struggling late-night show getting the axe. It was, in her eyes, a sign that democracy itself was unraveling. She name-dropped Elizabeth Warren. She invoked Bernie Sanders. According to Sunny, powerful political voices were demanding an explanation. She even claimed the Writers Guild had contacted the Attorney General, urging a federal investigation into whether Colbert's firing was politically motivated. Let that sink in for a moment. She genuinely suggested that the Department of Justice, the same DOJ that deals with terrorism, crime rings, and international threats, should pause all operations and dig into why a late-night comedy show with tanking ratings got canceled. The way she delivered it, you'd think The Late Show was the modern-day equivalent of Watergate. She warned again and again that, if this was political, then everyone should be alarmed. Left, right, center, it didn't matter. The Republic was under siege, and at the center of this brewing constitutional crisis, Stephen Colbert, a man once celebrated for his quick wit, now elevated by Sunny to martyr status. But here's what she didn't mention, or perhaps refused to accept. The ratings, the money, the simple truth that The Late Show just wasn't connecting with audiences anymore. It wasn't profitable. And when a show stops pulling in viewers and starts bleeding money, the network pulls the plug. That's not censorship. That's business. But Sunny and others like her don't live in that reality. They live in a tightly sealed media bubble, where every Trump joke is a cultural event and every anti-Republican jab is gospel. So when the data tells a different story, when viewers tune out, instead of laughing along, they default to one conclusion: conspiracy. It must be a political attack, because the alternative that they're out of touch with everyday Americans is too unsettling to consider. So when a show like The Late Show crashes and burns, the reaction isn't reflection, it's deflection. Instead of asking, did we lose touch with the audience? They leap straight to crisis mode. Suddenly, it's not about low ratings or tired content, it's censorship, it's fascism. It's the opening act of some grand Shakespearean tragedy where democracy dies not with a bang, but with the cancellation of a talk show. And leading the charge, as always, is Sunny Hostin. Her playbook is as predictable as it is dramatic. If something doesn't align with her worldview, it's not just unfortunate, it's catastrophic. When immigration laws are enforced, she calls it kidnapping. Holding centers, to her, they're modern-day concentration camps. And now, a failing comedy show getting the axe. That's apparently authoritarian suppression of free speech. The pattern is clear: exaggerate, dramatize, deny any responsibility. Because in their echo chamber, being wrong isn't just embarrassing, it's impossible. So instead of reassessing, they spin conspiracies. They scream about America's decline, when in reality, people are simply tired of hearing Stephen Colbert recycle the same monologue for the 1,000th time. But just as Sunny thought she had claimed the moral high ground, someone finally spoke up. Sarah N. Levelheaded.com, and refreshingly grounded, broke the spell with a dose of reality. She reminded everyone of a basic truth: linear TV, the old school cable and network format, is fading fast. She explained that by 2029, traditional television won't be gone entirely, but it'll be a shadow of its former self, a niche medium. That's not a conspiracy. That's just the evolution of technology and shifting viewer habits. She even pointed out a hard fact: ad revenue for traditional TV has plummeted by 40% since 2018. And guess what? Advertisers are following the audience, and the audience has moved on. They're not watching TV the way they used to. The audience has migrated to digital platforms, binge-friendly streaming services, and the endless scroll of social media. That's where the conversation lives now. That's where attention thrives. But when Sunny casually tossed out the term linear TV, the entire room seemed to glitch for a second. She paused, confused, then asked the question no one expected from someone in her position: wait, what is that? And in that moment, the illusion shattered. The same person sounding the alarm about the collapse of democracy didn't even grasp the basic structure of the media world she claims is under attack. It was the kind of moment that said more than any monologue ever could. And while she stumbled over terminology, Sarah cut through the noise with something much simpler. This isn't politics. This is business. Cold, undeniable, numbers-driven business. Television is evolving. The old guard of scheduled programming and nightly talk shows is fading fast. Viewers aren't sitting down at 11:35 p.m. to watch a network host deliver a monologue written by a team of 15 writers. They're scrolling TikTok. They're watching unscripted YouTube commentary. They're getting unfiltered takes from creators in hoodies, not tailored suits. But instead of adapting to that shift, Sunny and her crew are locked in a fantasy, a world where every rating drop, every cancellation, every loss in engagement must be part of some coordinated attack. Evil conservative machine out to silence the truth. It's a comforting narrative. It's also delusional. Desperate to salvage her argument, Sunny doubled down with numbers. She clung to ad revenue statistics like a life raft, proudly declaring that late-night shows generated around $150 million in ad revenue from July 2024 to July 2025. She even spotlighted Stephen Colbert's show, citing its $60 million share, like it was irrefutable proof of success. But here's where it all fell apart. She either didn't understand or didn't want to understand that revenue isn't the same as profit. You can bring in $60 million, sure, but if your show costs $100 million to produce, you're not breaking even, you're bleeding. That's a $40 million loss, not a victory lap. It was like watching someone proudly tell you how much money they spent at a store, thinking that somehow meant they made a profit. It wasn't just a mistake, it was embarrassing, especially from someone who constantly reminds the world of her Ivy League credentials. The kind of financial disconnect she displayed is something you'd learn to avoid in week one of running a lemonade stand. And yet, this is the same host overseeing a late-night empire staffed by over 200 people, burning through a monstrous budget, just to recycle the same tired political jokes each night. Meanwhile, independent creators with zero overhead are pulling in millions of views by just telling the truth. That moment didn't just highlight a misunderstanding, it exposed the exact reason why legacy media is crumbling in real time. It was like watching the final threads unravel on a suit that once fit perfectly but now hangs awkwardly, stitched together by ego and denial. And just when you thought Sunny couldn't sink any lower, she handed herself the shovel and dug deeper, trying to salvage her credibility. She launched into a monologue that sounded intellectual, big words, confident tone, but it only made things worse. With the air of someone used to applause, she proudly declared that the show couldn't possibly be struggling, because it generated $60 million in ad revenue. Her tone said checkmate. But her numbers, they said, rookie mistake. She went on, flaunting a supposed 6% uptick in overall late-night ad revenue, as if that tiny stat was a mic drop moment. What she didn't seem to grasp or pretended not to was the difference between revenue and profit. It was painfully clear to anyone with even the most basic financial literacy. Revenue is what you make, profit is what you keep, and if your expenses outweigh your earnings, that $60 million means nothing. It was like bragging about selling $500 worth of cookies at a bake sale, after spending $1,000 on flour, sugar, decorations, and a rented unicorn mascot. Sure, the cash register made noise, but your wallet's still empty. And that's exactly what's happening behind the shiny curtains of late-night TV. Glitzy ad numbers on paper, bleeding losses behind the scenes. But the most awkward part, Sunny didn't even realize she was losing the argument. She sat there, polished and proud, tossing around numbers with no context like confetti at a parade, totally unaware that she was actually proving everyone else's point. This wasn't insight. This was a panic defense. Because here's the thing, she wasn't really defending Stephen Colbert. This wasn't about loyalty to a fellow host or a righteous stand for late-night comedy. This was self-preservation. The same fear that's gripping every legacy media figure as they feel the floor shift beneath them. Sunny sees the writing on the wall, etched in big, bold letters. Traditional TV is becoming background noise. Viewers are walking away, not in protest, but in boredom. The model that once propped up careers like hers is collapsing, and she knows it. Her brand of polished outrage and neatly packaged political hot takes, it's losing steam. Fast. So, what does she do? She shifts the conversation, starts talking about democracy dying and authoritarianism rising, not because she believes it deeply, but because it's the only cloak she has left. A dramatic, emotional cover story that hides a much scarier truth. The platform she's standing on is sinking, and she has no plan B. Maybe we're just not entertaining anymore. And maybe, that's the harsh truth, no one on that panel is brave enough to say out loud. What made it worse, what made it almost painful to watch, was how everyone else just sat there, silent, letting Sunny ramble on without a single meaningful challenge. No pushback, no reality check. Maybe they were being polite. Maybe they were nervous. Or maybe, they just didn't care enough to bother. While Sunny waxed poetic about free speech, viewers across the country were already tuning out, clicking over to YouTube, scrolling through TikTok, or pulling up podcasts from creators who don't need a $100 million budget to be real. They're not polished, they're not scripted, but they're honest. And in 2025, that's what people crave more than ever. And Sunny knows that. You can see it in her performance, because that's exactly what it is now, a performance. The louder she gets, the more inflated her language becomes. Each sentence, trying harder than the last to sound important, urgent, intellectual, because deep down, she's terrified. Not of being canceled, not of being censored, but of being forgotten. Of being quietly let go, with a polite email from some VP that says, "We're going in a new direction." She doesn't want her curtain call to be a whisper. She wants fireworks, applause, a legacy. But legacy doesn't mean what it used to. That's the gap no one on those shows wants to talk about. The disconnect between the fantasy world Sunny's clinging to and the cold reality of modern media economics. While she flaunts outdated ratings metrics and Nielsen numbers like they still hold weight, the truth is, the viewers have already left the building. And that's exactly where Alyssa's voice cut through like a scalpel, clear, pointed, inconvenient. She said what Sunny couldn't face. Legacy media can't keep up. Not with independent creators, rising by the minute. Not with viewers who've changed the way they consume content. And definitely not with a bloated talk show that costs tens of millions to produce and delivers the same tired political theater week after week. People don't want curated outrage anymore. They want something that feels really, even if it's rough around the edges. Even if it's filmed on an iPhone in someone's basement. The raw beats, the rehearsed, the authentic beats, the agenda-driven, and creators without studios or staff are now doing what Sunny and her panel once dominated, shaping public opinion. But Sunny can't allow herself to believe that. She needs a villain. She needs to believe that if her ratings ever drop, if advertisers ever pull out, it won't be because the audience got bored, it'll be because of some sinister political plot, Trumpism, censorship, culture war. It's Easier to blame the shadows than to admit the spotlight is fading. And it is fading. The audience is leaving. The numbers are real. And the excuses, they're running out.